So hello and welcome to the presentation of AstroCamp 2021. I'm Carlos Martins, I'm the scientific director of the camp. And together with Claudia and Mary, who are joining me from their homes due to COVID, we'll explain you a little bit what the AstroCamp is and how you can apply it to this year's edition. So I will start by sharing my screen. So the AstroCamp is an academic excellence program in the field of astronomy and physics, which is organized by the Center of Astrophysics of the University of Porto in cooperation with the Paredes de Cora municipality, and it's aimed at high school students, so students in the last 3 years of pre-university education. So this year it will be the 10th edition of the camp. We started back in 2012, and this year's edition will be from the 8th to the 22nd of August. And the camp is always in the same place, in the Center for Environmental Education of the Cordon Bleu Protected Landscape Area, Paredes de Cora municipality, in the north of Portugal. So our aim is to identify bright, talented, hardworking students and isolate them for these 2 weeks in a quiet place, away from the stress of urban centers, and give these students some high-quality training in astronomy and physics and in a bunch of other things. Get the students to interact with each other, get to know other people their age who have similar interests, and stimulate other important skills, critical thinking, teamwork, group responsibility, and so on. So we give you an intensive training essentially for 2 weeks and give you all the best possible conditions for you to learn as much as you can. So that's the general plan. How do we implement this in practice? Well, first, the camp is selective, which means that if you want to participate, you have to go through an application process. And that application process in the second stage includes an interview, which is done in English. I'll tell you later when this is done and so on. A point of principle which I have kept since the beginning of the camp is that for students in Portuguese schools, so students studying in Portugal, not necessarily being Portuguese citizens, but studying in Portugal, the camp has no cost. So we have funding which is sufficient to cover all your costs, including travel from your home to the camp, at least if you do it by public transport. Now the camp is international, and for students coming from other countries, we also have some financial support. We have some international partners that have agreed to support students. And again, I'll tell you a bit more about this later on. We have some funding of our own that we can use for foreign students to cover part of the expenses. But in some cases, you may need to pay part of the costs of your participation. Again, I'll come back to that point a little bit later. So what do we actually do in the camp? Well, there's a bunch of scientific and non-scientific activities. They vary slightly from year to year, but roughly speaking, the main scientific activities are 2 courses. So each has 10 classes of 1.5 hours each, and each of them has a written exam at the end of the camp. We have computational and/or observational projects for you to learn coding, for you to learn data analysis and statistics and various other skills. We have Stargazing Sessions, so we are in a protected landscape area where there is very little or no light pollution, so it's a very good place to look at the sky and observe it. We watch documentaries, geek documentaries especially, and things of that sort. We talk to astronomers and physicists in other places via Skype or Zoom, so students can meet them and discuss their work and their career paths and so on. So that's the scientific part. In addition to that, we have a number of other activities. So every year we have some community service projects, and I'll give you one example in a moment. We have a series of public talks, not necessarily on astronomy or physics, which are in principle open to the general public. people in the area that want to come along. Being in the mountains, we do quite a lot of hiking, including one overnight hike to watch the Perseids meteor shower, which happens during the period of the camp. And we have a bunch of other recreational activities, which again change a little bit from year to year. It's also useful to know that the camp itself lasts 2 weeks, but can continue beyond these 2 weeks. There's a number of post-camp projects that students can do or can keep doing after the camp if they choose to. Now, obviously, these days we have COVID around, and this already had an impact last year. And the impact was that for the first time, we were forced to have an hybrid camp. What I mean by hybrid is that for students that were living in Portugal, they could go to the camp and be there. So we're in residence, as in normal years, let's say, with the appropriate health and safety measures in place. But unfortunately, foreign students could not come to Portugal and be at the camp. So they had to participate virtually in all activities where this was feasible. So this happened last year. This year, we hope that in August, the situation will be under control, such that we can have a fully residential camp again. If that's not the case, we may be forced to have a hybrid camp again, which obviously is not ideal, but might be the best we can do. So obviously, we are recording this in February. We don't know how the situation will be in August, but of course, we'll keep all the candidates updated on any developments. And the positive news is that we've done a hybrid camp last year, so we know what worked well, what didn't work so well, and if we have to do a hybrid camp again this year, we'll do it. We know how to do it, and we'll do it even better than last year. Okay, coming back to happier things, let me talk about what I think is the main example of a community service project we did. This is what we call the solar system trail. So the students of the first 4 AstroCamps built a scale model of the solar system that is accurate, both in terms of sizes of the objects and in terms of distances of the objects. Very easy to build a scale model that is accurate in one of the parameters, but not the other. It's a lot harder to do it such that it's accurate in both parameters. In fact, as far as I know, there's only 15 or 16 such models throughout Europe. We, the students of AstroCamp, built one of these. So this was built in the first years of the camp. It was officially open together with a hiking trail that follows the planets back in 2016. And now this scale model and the hiking trail are actually used as a teaching resource for Portuguese 7th grade students. So there's a whole new generation of students in Portugal that will learn in 7th grade the basics of the solar system by using our trail, which I think is a very nice legacy of the AstroCamp. Okay, so just before giving the word to Mary and Claudia, let me sort of summarize some details of this participants in the previous edition. So we had 9 editions so far. The first 4 from 2012 to 2015 were only for Portuguese students, so only Portuguese students could apply. From 2016, we started accepting applications from foreign students. And in the slide, you can see some basic statistics of the participants. So we see Portuguese and foreign students are now participating more or less in similar numbers. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade are the names we give in Portugal to the last 3 years of high school. Of course, in other countries, the names will be different. There's a slightly larger number of 11th grade students participating. That's, I think, for sociological reasons, let's say. And there are slightly more girls than boys participating and also applying to the camp. One thing I want to emphasize looking at this slide is that there is no quotas of any kind. There's no quotas for Portuguese or foreign students. There's no quotas for students in different school years. There's no quotas for boys and girls. So the only criterion is the merit and potential of the applicants. So the fact that the numbers are balanced is let's say, a happy coincidence, but it is a coincidence in the sense that it's not enforced. It's just the outcome of the merit and potential of the people who do apply. Okay, and with that said, I will now let Mary and Claudia explain a little bit what happened in last year's edition, and then I'll come back to explain in more detail how you can apply to this year's edition.
So hi, my name is Mary, and I participated in last year's edition. I'm from Finland, and because of that, I participated remotely, and I will talk about that soon. At the moment, I'm a senior year student in Natural Science High School, and I hope that I will start studying physics at university this fall. My interests were the biggest reasons why I applied to the AstroCamp. I have been interested in physics and astronomy since secondary school. I have been a member of URSA for 5 years now. URSA is the biggest astronomy association in Finland. There I'm one of the counselors of camps that URSA offers for young people. On the right side of the slide, you can see me teaching about gravitational lenses at one of those camps. 2 years ago, I took part in Nordic Telescope course in Finland. On the right corner of the slide, you can see one photo that we took of Crab Nebula in that course. There I heard of AstroCamp, and I thought that it could be a next good challenge for me. I was also really excited when I heard that there will be coding at the camp, and after that course I applied. Next slide. So as I said, I was an online student at the camp, so my experience was different than Portuguese students. First of all, I would say that the online camp was organized really well. I didn't have any logistics problems during the camp. We had 2 main channels, Zoom and Discord. Every lecture and researchers' talks, etc. were in Zoom. Then we had a Discord channel for chatting and questions. I think it was really useful because it was easy to talk about the problems that I, for example, faced with the coding there, and we were also able to talk after the camp there. Next. So now I will talk about what one online camp day included. Every morning we had 2 lectures about interesting astronomy-related topics. My favorite lectures were about theory of relativity because those lectures included some calculation. On some days, we had chats with researchers from different fields of natural sciences. Those chats were really useful because you were able to ask questions and learn what it's like to be a researcher in real life. After chats, we did some coding in pairs and talked about the project. In the evening, one of the monitors of the camp gave us a talk about the topic that they were interested in. After those talks, we were able to talk with Portuguese and online students via Discord. On the weekends and sometimes during the week, we had some activities like group games and cooking some Portuguese cookies at home. You can see a photo of those cookies on the right side. Last weekend, we had final exams. You don't really need to worry about those because those are just meters for you. If you have been active at the camp, you can relax with the exams. Next. For me, the most educational part of the camp was Computational Project. It is a project that you will start before the camp and then continue with it after. I really liked it because we were able to work with real data and work with some topics that researchers in the world work with at the moment too. For example, dark energy and cosmological and Hubble constants were some topics of the coding project. During the project, you will really learn useful skills that you will really need in university if you go there. First of all, coding in itself is a really important skill nowadays, and also those statistical methods that we learned are part of many university degrees. The beginning of the computational project was hard for me, even though I'm familiar with coding, so don't be shy to ask questions, especially if you haven't coded before. Because those online logistics were organized so well, we were able to continue the project after the camp if we wanted. And on the right side of the slide, you can see one figure that my coding pair and I coded after the camp. Maybe you will understand it better if you apply to the camp. So lastly, I want to say that AstroCamp was really good experience for me, although I didn't get the whole camp experience because I was an online student. So I really recommend you to apply even though you would need to participate remotely. AstroCamp helped me to learn and improve the skills that I will really need in future and especially in university. I would say that AstroCamp suits for people that want to challenge themselves and learn more about astronomy and work with it. Thank you.
Hey guys, so I'm Claudia and I'm here to tell you a little bit of my experience at AstroCamp. I'm 17 years old and I live in Portugal and I hope to one day work in the space and technology sector. My interests range from science to humanities and one of my hobbies is programming. So in AstroCamp, you'll be able to do many fun activities. Some of them are related to astronomy, such as stargazing, do the solar system trail, and watch some fun documentaries. Unrelated to astronomy, you'll also be able to try out local recipes, explore the landscape, and visit the local river beach. So what can you expect at AstroCamp? Well, you can expect to learn in a relaxed and welcoming experience that isn't like school, for example. Your day will be split between classes and activities. In my case, we had classes during the morning, and then in the afternoon, we would have the computational project or one of the activities that I mentioned earlier. You'll always be doing something new at AstroCamp. You'll always be learning something or doing some sort of activity, so you'll never be bored. While we will always also have time to rest and to study a little bit the topics that you've learned earlier. Regarding the infrastructure, well, you can see the SEIA building online, which is what I recommended to you. But I can tell you that the building is really clean and comfortable. We had our own living room where we would chat and rest a little bit after classes and in between breaks. So in my experience, if you're curious and if you like science and if you always like to learn something new, AstroCamp is definitely the place for you. I had the chance to meet amazing new people who I still keep in touch with, and altogether, it made me fall in love with science even more.
So thanks, Mary and Claudia. So now hopefully you're convinced that AstroCamp is for you and that you want to apply to this year's edition. So I will now explain you a little bit what you have to do and when. So first, let me explain what the eligibility criteria are. So as I said, to participate, you have to be in one of the last 3 years of pre-university education. So in Portugal, that's 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. In other countries, the names will be different, but it's the last 3 years before you start university. And there's also a nationality criterion, which is essential. So you need to be a citizen of and living in one of the 42 countries that appear on the slide, and the two things must occur cumulatively. So you must live and study and be a national of one of these countries, although the country need not be the same in all cases. For example, it could be a Portuguese student studying in France or something like that. That's fine. But if you are a Portuguese student studying in Australia, that is not fine. In that case, you would not be eligible. So there's 36 countries in Europe. That's all European Union countries and some additional ones, plus 6 countries in North and South America. So that's 42 countries in total. And as I said previously, a good number of these countries have already been represented among the camp participants and a lot more among camp candidates. Okay, so that's the eligibility. So what do we plan for this year? I already told you the dates. It's August 8 to 22. Assuming that the COVID situation is under control, we'll have a fully residential camp, and we expect to have somewhere between 15 and 20 students in the camp. This is partly constrained by the funding we have, also in part by the quality of the applicants, let's say. So 15 to 20 students. We expect to have between 2 and 4 teachers, and as a point of principle, all teachers in the camp must be active researchers, so people having PhDs in relevant areas of astronomy and physics, and who are currently active in research. So people can tell you what are the hot topics in astronomy and physics these days. And additionally, we'll also have between 5 and 6 camp monitors. So these camp monitors are students currently doing undergraduate or master's degrees in university. And in almost all cases, these monitors are former students. People participated in the camp as students, and therefore they know the camp, they know how it works, they know the kinds of difficulties that students tend to have, and so on. So they're the ideal people to help the students about their participation in the camp. Now, regarding funding, as I said previously, the camp is free for students in Portugal, so you don't need to worry about that part. For foreign students, we have a number of agreements with foreign partners which can fund some of the students. So one example is ESO, which always provides a bursary from one student from one ESO member country. Secondly, we have Fundació Catalunya La Pedrera, which is a foundation in Catalonia, in Spain, and they agreed to fund up to 2 students if they belong to one of their programs called Jovens e Ciência. So here there's no quotas, but if students who are members of this program apply and are selected, then the program will fund the students' participation. This year we have one novelty, so we managed to secure a similar agreement with the Swedish Astronomical Youth Society. And the agreement is similar. So if students that are members of this society apply and are selected to the camp, then the society will fund one of these students. Again, there's no quotas, there's no guaranteed places, but if students are offered places, then Astronomische Ungdom, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, will cover the expenses of one student. And we have other informal agreements with institutions in other countries, which on a case-by-case basis may provide funding for additional students. Let me also tell you about other things happening behind the scenes right now and other things that you might expect if you are offered a place. We mentioned courses already and classes, and one of the things that we always do is we let the students be involved in the selection of the courses that they will have. So at the moment, we have a call for courses. So researchers who are interested in coming and teach at the camp can contact us and propose possible courses, send us a plan of the course, what they want to teach, and so on. We make a selection of these courses. We check that they are they make sense scientifically and pedagogically. And then in the final stage of selection of the students, when the students are interviewed, students will be given a list of possible courses, and then they can express their preferences and tell us which courses that they would prefer to have, or at least rank the courses in order of preference. And then we take that information, though, that students' opinion into consideration when deciding which courses will actually happen. If all the students more or less prefer the same courses, then everyone will have the same courses. If there are significant differences, then we might have a larger number of courses, and then different students will have different courses. Here, the constraint, of course, is funding. If we need to have more teachers in the camp, we need to pay for their accommodation and food, and a little bit less money will be left for the students. So that's why this has to be thought of carefully. But in any case, the students will be involved in the selection of the courses they have. And you can see at the bottom of the slide some examples of courses that already were given at the camp. And you can see there's various types of courses. Some are more mathematical, some are more practical and hands-on, some are more specific, some are more broad. So there's various different kinds of courses that we can provide you. Now, as Mary already said, although the camp is in August, there will be preparation activities in July. Of course, some students at this time will be busy with university entrance exams, but you should be prepared to set aside some time in July to do some preliminary activities. Maybe read some articles, some texts that will provide you, start a little bit of coding, especially if you have not coded before, and so on. So this is not necessarily a lot of time, but you should prepare to invest a few days of work during the month of July to get you ready and up to speed for it. One other activity that we have is the Alumni Weekend. So assuming that the camp is residential for everyone, one tradition we have is that in the weekend in the middle of the camp, students from former editions can come to the camp again, so they can meet each other and get to meet the newest generation of AstroCamp. And of course, this year's students can meet students from previous years and talk to them about what they're doing now in university and so on. It's always a very good experience to interact with people that went through the same path as you and are now doing other interesting things. Okay, so that's the plan. Now, in terms of specifics of the logistics, the camp regulations can be found on the AstroCamp website, and I strongly encourage you to read them carefully and make sure you understand them. But let me just highlight a few important points that you will need to begin preparing your application if you decide to apply. So first, the application is always done online through the AstroCamp website, and the application period is during the month of April. So from the 1st to the 30th of April, you'll see the application form online on the website, and you just have to fill it, provide all the documents, and submit. I already mentioned the eligibility, so last 3 years of pre-university education. So in principle, this means students born between 2003 and 2005, although there can be variations to these dates. In different countries, students start school or finish high school at slightly different ages. So this criterion is not an absolute criterion, and it doesn't mean you cannot apply if you're born in 2002 or 2006, but you do need to be in the last 3 years of high school. And all students are selected via this application process with one exception, which is that since the Paredes do Coura municipality is a partner in the organization, they can always nominate one student from the town high school to participate in the camp. So that student is selected separately. It's selected by Paredes do Coura High School. And so that student is not, he or she still has to submit an application, but the application is automatically accepted. On the other hand, you get to know a student from Project Coda, so you get to you get information from the locals about what it's like to live in the place and so on. So as already said, the selection criterion is academic merit and potential. And after you submit your application, if your application is retained to the second stage, the second stage is an interview. And in principle, if you live in Portugal, you can do that interview in person, either at the Center for Astrophysics of the University of Porto on Saturday, May 29, or in Lisbon at the Pavilion of Knowledge on Sunday, May 30. If you live abroad, or if you live very far away from Lisbon and Porto and don't want to go to one of them, you can always be interviewed online via Skype. So again, in 2020, due to COVID, all interviews were done online because at the time there were no safety conditions allowing us to do interviews. So one important point here is that the interviews have to be done on this weekend. So if you're planning to apply, make sure that you keep this weekend free, or at least a good part of this weekend free, because we'll have an interview necessarily in this week. So what do you need to apply? So in addition to personal data that you fill on the online form, you need a few documents. And if you want, you can start preparing these documents even before the application period starts. So first, you need a motivation letter that you write in English, explaining who you are, why do you want to apply, and what you expect to gain from it. Then you need a letter of recommendation from a current teacher. In principle, that letter should be in Portuguese or English. If your teacher really cannot write in either language, maybe he or she can write it in a different language, and then you can arrange for that letter to be translated. It's important that it's a current teacher. Ideally, it should be a physics teacher or a maths teacher, so a teacher that knows you well and knows in particular what you know when it comes to science, physics, maths, and so on. Again, this is not a completely strict rule. If you have, let's say, a biology teacher that has been your teacher for 7 years and knows you really well, then it might be a good idea to ask that teacher to write the letter for you, rather than a physics teacher that has only known you for 6 months. So these are general rules. Within reason, you can think of exceptions. And we also need the latest school certificate that includes your grades. In Portugal, this would be the second term grades, so the grades that you get just before Easter. But in other countries, the schedules might be different. It might be a school certificate that you got some months before. It's in any case the latest certificate that you have, including your grades. And again, if you have some doubts about this, feel free to contact us and can clarify and suggest what is the or what document you should submit. And optionally, if you have documents regarding your participation in other relevant scientific activities, let's say physics Olympiads or astronomy Olympiads or other kinds of activities, science internships, various other things, you can submit these documents as additional supporting documents for your application. But these are optional, they are not necessary. Now, finally, and this one is crucial, if you are not yet 18 years old at the moment you apply, you need an authorization from your parents or legal guardians authorizing you to apply. Now, the important thing here is age at the moment when you apply. What I mean by this is, let's say your 18th birthday is, for example, in June this year. If that's the case, then if you are selected to the camp, when the camp starts, you'll be 18. And therefore, at that moment, you will not need your parents' authorization to participate. However, in that case, you'd still be 17 when you send the application. And in that case, you still need your parents' authorization to apply. So you need to send this authorization together with your application. Otherwise, your application would be rejected. In fact, legally, would not even be able to look at the application. So pay attention to this, because every year there's a few applicants that send the application without this document, and then they cannot consider these applications. So all these documents are sent with the application, so you just upload them in the application form, with the exception of the letter from your teacher. What happens in this case is that in the application form, you indicate the name and the email of the teacher that will write the letter for you. And of course, this means that you should contact your teacher before you send the application, and the teacher needs to agree to provide a letter for you. So you just provide the name and email of the teacher. And then when you send the application, our database automatically sends an email to that teacher with the details for the teacher to send us back the letter. Now, it's important that this April 30 deadline also applies to the letter. So we also need to receive the letter from your teacher until the April 30 deadline. Of course, if you send your application 10 minutes before the deadline, we'll not give your teacher 9 minutes to send the letter. We are reasonable people. We might give the teacher another 24 hours to send the letter, but not more than that. So it's important that you remind the teacher of this deadline. And this also means that ideally you should send your application a few days before the deadline, so the teacher has time to prepare and send the letter. Some additional points of logistics. As I said, the deadline for applications is at the end of April. The interviews are at the end of May, and if you are selected to the camp, you will receive an email offering you a place on or maybe 1 or 2 days before June the 4th. Now, if you receive this offer, you must confirm your participation in less than 10 days, so by June 13. Because if you don't do that, then you lose the place and some other student will get the place. And here, by confirming participation, I don't just mean that you reply to the email saying, yes, I will come. There'll be some additional documents that you'll need to provide. There'll be some forms that you need to sign or that your parents need to sign. So you should be aware that there will be other paperwork to fill. Obviously, if you have any physical or functional limitations, you need to tell us as soon as possible, so we can plan for those in good time. Things like food restrictions, if you're a vegetarian, if you have food allergies, are not a problem. We can take care of them, but obviously we need to know in advance, because the people who provide the meals and prepare them need to plan for these special requirements. So most things can be taken care of as long as you give us enough time to prepare for them. The camp is residential, at least if COVID permits it. And this means that everyone, students, monitors, and teachers, stays in the camp, stays at SEIA for the full 2 weeks. So it's completely impossible, both for logistics and pedagogical reasons, for anyone to arrive later, so a little bit after everyone else, or to leave earlier than anyone else. So in no circumstances will it be possible for someone to participate only in a part of the camp. If you have some other commitments in part of these dates, that's unfortunate, of course, but that's life. So essentially, you need to make it a 2-week commitment. And more specifically, so the relevant period is as follows. So you need to arrive at the meeting point, which is the train and bus station in the town of Viana do Castelo, before 4 p.m. on August the 8th. Because at 4 p.m. there'll be a special bus taking us from that meeting point to the camp. So you have to make sure that you arrive at this meeting point before 4 p.m. And then everyone will come back to this meeting point by noon on August 22. So in this period, you have to be available, and there's no way around it. So for students living in continental Portugal, they might decide to travel by public transport to this meeting point, or sometimes parents drive them to this meeting point. In case of foreign students, then you have to fly into Porto Airport, and we'll have someone waiting for you there. So you just tell us when your flight arrives, and one of the teachers or one of the camp monitors will be at the airport waiting for you, and then you'll do the rest of the trip from the airport to the meeting point, accompanied by one of the teachers and one of the monitors. So speaking of travel within Portugal, students in continental Portugal, if they travel from their residence to the meeting point by public transport and ask for receipts for the bus tickets or train tickets, having the tax number of the Center of Astrophysics, then these expenses will be refunded. So you have to buy the tickets yourself, but then we'll refund you the cost of those tickets. For students coming from the Azores or Madeira Islands, we cannot guarantee that we'll get support for your flights, but we will try. And previous students, especially from the Azores, got support from the regional government for the flights between the Azores and Porto. So we can write a letter of support saying that you've been offered a place in the camp and so on, and that typically is enough to convince the regional government to cover your flights. For foreign students, we cannot cover these flights. If they have funding sources, then these funding sources might cover the flights. If not, then the students or their parents will have to cover that. And going back to the issue of funding, if foreign students have no other sources of funding, so if they need to pay for parts of their cost in the camp, the maximum cost will be 400 euro. It might be less than that, but at most it will be 400 euro. And this needs to be paid by bank transfer by the end of June. As I said, I hope that for a good number of foreign students, we will have sources of funding such that the students will not have to pay this. But if there's no other source, then at least you know what is the maximum cost and by when you have to pay it. And again, we're very happy if you're searching for funds in your country. We're always happy to provide a letter of support confirming that you've been offered a place. And so on. Okay, so just to summarize the key dates, applications during the month of April, done online. By around the 10th of May, if you are selected for an interview, you should receive an email inviting you to that interview. And the email will propose a specific time and day. If you're not available at that time and day, it's important that you reply quickly and propose alternative times. As you can imagine, we'll have the weekend busy with lots of interviews, so shifting times around might not be trivial, but we'll try. But it helps if you tell us all the times where you are available. The interviews are at the end of May. For students in Portugal and relatively near Porto or Lisbon, in principle, you can do the interview in person. Typically, that's a little bit less stressful than doing the interview online. So I would say if you can do the interview in person, it would be beneficial for you to do it in person, but we work very hard to make sure that from our point of view, there's no advantage of disadvantage. And the advantage might be on your side because you'll feel less stressed about an interview in person than an interview online. But from our point of view, we do our best to ensure that the process is fair for everybody. So interviews at the end of May. By 4th of June, place is offered, and you have about a week or 10 days to confirm your participation, to fill all the necessary missing documents and so on. In some cases, people realize that they have other commitments in August and they actually cannot participate. That doesn't happen very often, but it happened already a couple of times. So sometimes we get students being offered places a little bit later than the others just because a new place has become free. And if there's any payments to be done by you, then they are done. They should be done until the end of June. In the case of international partners like ESO or Fundação Catalunha La Pedreira or the Swedish Astronomical Youth Society, these entities make the payment directly to us, so there's nothing to worry about for the students. So everything is done internally between us and for the student, that there's no additional work. And on the slide, you see the AstroCamp website. That's where all the information is. So finally, and just to reiterate a few points that Mary and Claudia already made, AstroCamp is your chance to learn about some of your favorite astrophysics topics, to talk to active scientists, both in person at the camp and other scientists that you'll meet in remote chats. It's your chance to meet a bunch of other students that have similar interests and motivations in life than you, and students coming from various different countries and various different backgrounds. It's also your chance to analyze data from some of the world's best telescopes and to learn high-level scientific programming and modern statistical analysis techniques. And these are broad skills that you'll need in any career in science and technology, even if you decide not to pursue a career in physics or astronomy. So they are skills that will help you throughout your life in a much broader context. On the other hand, I think it's quite clear from what we said so far that AstroCamp is not just a summer holiday camp. You should be prepared to work hard for 2 weeks, but you'll be working and doing things that you enjoy. So, and of course, we do our best to eliminate all the sources of stress, so to give you the best possible conditions, such that you can learn as much as possible and in the company of other people that enjoy learning and enjoy teaching these things, because they think that these things are intrinsically cool and people should know about. But I also want to emphasize that this is not a camp just for future astrophysicists. We have people who apply to the camp knowing that they want to study physics and astronomy in university, but we also have people applying to the camp because they are undecided. And since they don't have so much of a contact with astronomy in high school, they want to see what it's like to work in astronomy these days. And we also have people who like astronomy and want to learn more about it, even if they have decided already not to study astronomy or physics in high school. Maybe they want to go into medicine or business or philosophy or whatever, but they still enjoy astronomy and they still enjoy learning, and they see the AstroCamp as an opportunity to do that. So all these are excellent reasons to apply to the AstroCamp. It's essentially a way for you to learn how science is done and to learn a bunch of critical thinking skills that will be helpful for you throughout your life, regardless of what you decide in the future. Finally, I mentioned previously that we need a certificate of your grades as part of the selection process, but I also want to emphasize that the AstroCamp is not necessarily for the students with the best grades. Obviously, the grades are an indicator of some things, and in the first stage of the application, where we still don't know you, the grades give us useful information, which complements what you say in your motivation letter and complements what your teacher says in the recommendation letter. But grades are not everything. And in the interview, grades don't really matter. If you made it all as far as the interview, then at the interview stage, everyone is more or less at the same level, and the interview will decide, because at the interview, we are selecting between candidates, all of which are very, very good. So don't feel intimidated because your friend or your classmate is also applying and he or she has slightly better grades than you. If you feel you'd like to be at the AstroCamp, if you'd like to apply, then just apply. Having said that, the AstroCamp is selective. There is a selection process. So you should make an effort to prepare a good application. Don't leave it for the last day. Because you'll be competing against students who also want to come to the camp and therefore will make an effort to prepare a good application. So make an effort to explain who you are, why you want to come to the camp and so on, because that effort might pay off. And also bear in mind that, as I said a few minutes ago, you should be prepared to work a little bit in July and more during the camp. The camp will challenge you every day. You will learn things that almost nobody else in your age will know about. You'll learn things that you'll only learn a few years later when you are in university. So this is challenging. So essentially our goal is to try to get you to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. So it will be challenging. You'll learn new things every day, but again, you will learn about things that you enjoy learning, and in that sense, it is a positive challenge for you and all your colleagues. And with that, let me just remind you again that even if you have understood everything that we told you about and you are completely decided to apply, you should really have a close look at the regulations that you can find at the camp website. Read them carefully, make sure you understand them. So make sure you know what you have to apply, what you have to do to apply, make sure you know when you have to do it, and you can start preparing now, right? You should not leave this for the last few days. Make sure you plan things, do it in advance, because in that case, your chances of success are much higher. And if you have any questions about what we said, or about the information in the camp regulations or any other information on the website, then there's a dedicated email that you can use to contact us, and we'll check the email regularly and we'll answer it very, very quickly. And in particular, when it comes to COVID, if there's any important updates, then these will appear on the website as soon as we have them. And with that, I think we can finish. So if you are interested in the camp, I encourage you to apply, and I hope to see many of you first at the interviews and then later on in August.